The 11th of April, 1945, Buchenwald concentration camp, Nazi Germany. Morning light falls weakly over the grey barracks surrounded by barbed wire. For days, the sound of battle has drawn closer. Now comes the low rumble of engines and tanks. When the gates at Buchenwald finally burst open, soldiers of the United States 4th and 6th Armored Division enter and stop in silence. Before them lies a landscape of horror, piles of corpses and the living scarcely distinguishable from the dead. Some of the soldiers cry, others cannot speak at all. In the officers' quarters of the concentration camp, investigators soon find objects beyond belief, examples of tattooed human skin, shrunken human heads and a table on which lie human remains displayed like samples. The Americans order citizens from the nearby city of Weimar to come and see what was done in their name. Among the survivors, one name is spoken again and again, a name that will soon become infamous around the world. It belongs to the woman who lived in the villa above the camp and who ruled there with cruelty and vanity. She is known as the Bitch of Buchenwald, but her real name is Ilse Koch. Ilse Koch was born as Margret Ilse Kohler on the 22nd of September, 1906 in Dresden, then part of the German Empire. Her father Max Kohler was a master craftsman, and her mother Anna took care of the household. Ilse had 2 siblings, and their upbringing was strict and orderly. After completing her compulsory German elementary and lower secondary schooling, she attended a trade school, where she learned secretarial skills and then found employment as a secretary in a number of local firms. As a young woman in the 1920s, Ilse lived through the chaos of the Weimar Republic, in the time of hyperinflation, unemployment, and street battles between political factions of extreme right and left. To most of her generation, the promises of strong leadership and national rebirth offered by the rising Nazi Party seemed to answer the despair of those years. In April 1932, Ilse joined the Nazi Party, receiving a party number 1,130,836. At that time, she was 25, ambitious, and drawn to the energy and spectacle of Nazism. Less than a year later, in January 1933, Adolf Hitler came into power. In new Nazi Germany, women were expected to serve as loyal wives and mothers, bearers of a pure Aryan race. Yet for Ilse, politics was also a path to power. She was fascinated by the Nazi Party, and through its social circles she met various officers of the SS and SA, which were the Nazi paramilitary organizations. Among them was Karl-Otto Koch, a man whose destiny would soon connect with hers. Karl-Otto was an SS officer, disciplined and proud, and already experienced in the growing system of concentration camps that spread across Germany. He was 9 years older than Ilse, confident, and represented everything she admired: authority, ambition, and privilege. Their relationship grew quickly and they married in 1937 in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, where Karl-Otto had been appointed commandant. It was a strange wedding, held inside a place of terror, surrounded by guards and prisoners, but it symbolized their shared devotion to the Nazi regime. Soon afterward, the SS assigned Karl-Otto to build and command a new camp near the city of Weimar. The place was called Buchenwald, and in the summer of 1937, the couple moved into a large villa built for them on a hill overlooking the camp. 2 years later, on the 1st of September 1939, the Second World War began. Between 1938 and 1940, Ilse gave birth at Buchenwald to 3 children: Artwin, Gisela and the youngest, Gudrun. However, Gudrun died of pneumonia in February 1941 at the age of 4 months. On the surface she appeared to be the perfect SS wife, elegant, educated, devoted to her husband and to the ideals of Adolf Hitler, but beneath the surface, greed and cruelty took hold. The Kochs quickly discovered how profitable their position could be, and they stole from the prisoners everything: their watches, jewelry, money, and even their gold teeth. Thanks to this, they lived like aristocrats, with servants, horses, and fine furniture. Ilse wore expensive dresses, paraded her wealth, and enjoyed humiliating anyone beneath her. To the other SS wives, she was boastful and was vulgarly showing her new wealth and exploited her position as the wife of the feared camp commander. The reason behind her bad relationships with other SS wives in the camp was also because she had various sexual affairs with other men in the camp, including with camp's deputy commandant, Hermann Florstedt, and physician Waldemar Hoven, who were themselves married and had children. Just as she flirted with SS men, she was brutal towards the prisoners. She rode through the camp on horseback, striking prisoners with a whip and shouting insults at them. She was remembered for laughing during the executions in the camp, and allegedly she walked near camp barracks in revealing clothes, only to have men who looked at her beaten half to death or shot in the head. In Buchenwald, Ilse Koch became known for her predatory sexual behavior and sadism. She ordered prisoners to serve her while she was nude and enjoyed sexually humiliating the inmates. She also sexually abused the camp's prisoners and forced male inmates to rape female prisoners in front of her, despite having 2 children of her own. She hated pregnant women, and she used to beat them with a whip along the entire length of which pieces of a razor were inserted. Ilse Koch also found pleasure in beating child inmates, which she conducted with a smile on her face. Her fascination with tattoos gave rise to the most terrible legend of all. Allegedly, she became obsessed with collecting pieces of tattooed human skin, and inmates with distinctive tattoo designs were noted by number, taken to the infirmary, and never returned. After the liberation, pieces of tattooed skin were found in the camp's pathology department, and lampshades made from human hides were displayed as evidence. Although courts later struggled to prove her direct involvement, the horror became inseparable from her name. Modern forensic tests confirmed that at least one of the infamous lampshades was indeed made from human skin, verifying what survivors had claimed for decades. Beneath the brutality, greed also corrupted the Koch household. In 1940, Karl-Otto built an indoor riding arena for his wife that cost more than 250,000 Reichsmarks, an equivalent of almost 2.5 million USD today, a fortune stolen from prisoner property. Karl-Otto Koch also bought a luxury car and opened Swiss bank accounts with money extorted from prisoners. They stole money from the camp treasury and bribed officials to look the other way. In 1941, their crimes attracted the attention, and investigation began regarding Karl-Otto Koch's governance of Buchenwald. Ilse's husband was arrested, but he was soon freed after his friend, SS Chief Heinrich Himmler, intervened. Koch was nonetheless relieved of his duties at Buchenwald and sent instead to command Majdanek concentration and extermination camp in German-occupied Poland. Ilse Koch continued to live in the SS settlement at Buchenwald in Karl-Otto's absence. However, on the 24th of August, 1943, both Karl-Otto and Ilse were arrested following a renewed SS investigation. The case was assigned to SS Judge George Conrad Morgan, who found evidence of theft, corruption, and murder. In the eyes of the SS, the crime was not the death of the prisoners itself, but the fact that Koch had ordered it without authorization and killed prisoners who treated him for syphilis, fearing they might expose him. The trial that followed was extraordinary, as the SS was judging its own. The trial resulted in Karl-Otto Koch being sentenced to death for disgracing both himself and the SS, and he was executed by firing squad on the 5th of April, 1945. Following the trial, Ilse Koch was released after 16 months in the Gestapo prison in Weimar and moved with her 2 children into a small flat in the city of Ludwigsburg, where part of her family lived. When Nazi Germany collapsed, the Allied forces began to uncover the full scale of the Nazi crimes. The Buchenwald camp, the place of the Koch's atrocities, was liberated on the 11th of April, 1945. On the 30th of June of that year, Ilse Koch was arrested by the American occupation authorities after being recognized on the street by a former inmate of Buchenwald concentration camp because of her lifestyle, which was characterized by sexual and alcoholic excesses. Ilse's relatives tried to withdraw her custody from the children, but due to the war turmoil, this happened only after she had been arrested. Ilse Koch was held in prison for 2 years before her trial opened on the 11th of April, 1947 at the former Dachau concentration camp near Munich. Out of 31 defendants, she was the only woman. The court considered her knowledge and at least indirect involvement in the exploitation and murder of the inmates to be proven. William Denson, the chief prosecutor during the trial, said that she was nothing less than a sadistic pervert of monumental proportions unmatched in history. In August 1947, Ilse Koch was sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against humanity. Koch was in an advanced stage of pregnancy at the time, which is said to have saved her from the death penalty imposed on 22 of her 30 co-defendants. A year later, in December 1948, General Lucius D. Clay, military governor of the U.S. occupation zone of Germany, commuted her sentence to 4 years because of insufficient evidence. The decision caused outrage in the United States, and under public pressure, the case was handed to the German courts. The hearing of the second trial opened on the 27th November 1950 and lasted 7 weeks, during which 250 witnesses were heard, including 50 for the defense. Koch collapsed and had to be carried from court in late December 1950 and again in January 1951. The defense of Ilse Koch tried another approach, and they claimed that she was merely the wife of a commandant who had no authority in the camp. But the court was not persuaded. On the 15th of January, 1951, in a 111-page verdict, Ilse Koch was sentenced to life imprisonment, the only woman in West Germany to receive such a sentence for Nazi crimes. She was not present in the courtroom when the judgment was announced. She was transferred to the women's prison in Eichach in Bavaria. There she spent the next 16 years behind bars. Her petitions for pardon were rejected one after another. In letters, she insisted she had been falsely accused and that her reputation had been destroyed by lies. But her mental state deteriorated. Guards described her as unstable, paranoid, and haunted by visions. Like when she claimed that concentration camp survivors would abuse her in her cell. When she was in prison, the world remembered her not for what she denied, but for what she represented, the moral collapse of those who embraced absolute power. Ilse Koch became the image of the female face of Nazi regime. Proof that evil is not confined to men or monsters but can dwell behind the face of an ordinary woman who chose to abandon conscience for a life of privilege and luxury. Outside the prison, her children lived under the shadow of her name. Her son Art Win, isolated and ashamed of his parents, committed suicide in 1967. Soon after the death of her son, Ilse lost contact with reality, and on the 1st of September 1967, she hanged herself, after which she was buried in an unmarked grave. The bitch of Buchenwald was dead. She was 60 years old.